Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Creating High Performance Employees. All lines have been muted. The webinar will last 1 hour, and we will have dedicated time after the presentation for questions and answers. If you have questions throughout, simply type them in the comments section, and we will address them during the Q&A time. This webinar is being recorded and will be sent to each participant afterwards. Our speaker for today is Matt Jensen. Matt is the CEO at Vance Thompson Vision in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the principal founder of Matt Jensen Marketing. He is a national columnist and international speaker on customer experience design in business and healthcare. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. At this time, I will turn the webinar over to Matt.
Well, thank you, Teresa, and thank you to Brittany, or to Bridget and Sydney. Read both those names at once, who helped coordinate this. Bridget with Eye Care Leaders and Teresa were tireless in getting this organized for today, and Cindy was extremely helpful with our team on the Matt Jensen marketing side to get this done as well. And I'm excited to be here, Teresa, because what we're going to be talking about is what we think in our practice and in our line of work in the marketing realm, one of the most one of the topics that has the most traction in business today. And it's how we talk about the team that does the work and how we keep them around, especially if they're valuable, in a time where it seems like work is becoming more and more transient. So as we were talking about this session today, and in the days and weeks leading up to this, we created a model for it that we're going to affectionately call the 4 C's. And it's the things that really are the unifying principles behind creating high-performance teams that want to stick around, that keep retention high. And like you mentioned, Teresa, I'm a part of an organization that's been growing rapidly over the past few years. I've been with Vance Thompson Vision for 16 years now, and back then it was Vance and me and 12 other employees, and now we've grown to just shy of 200. These are some of the providers we work with, both optometrists and ophthalmologists. Our optometrists don't do primary eye care or optical work. They do solely pre and post-operative care to serve as surgeon extenders for efficiency's sake. And they span now 5 states across the regions that most people who are on this line probably just fly over. We're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're in Fargo, North Dakota, Omaha, Nebraska, Alexandria, Minnesota, and Bozeman, Montana. And we're right in the middle of the hard-working part of the country. And I know all sites work hard, but the Upper Midwest is a special place to us. And we're excited to share some of what we've learned along the way. Now, these are things that we've learned not only from the practices that we run and that we've grown with over the past 16 years, but also because we're aligned as a marketing firm, and that's what Cindy helps us run. We get in and out of practices, nearly 50 a year, and work closely with industries, with their development departments, and see what other businesses on Main Street are struggling with their teams and their staff. And so today isn't going to be a lecture per se. We're not going to, talk at you about what you need to learn and hopefully you draw some knowledge from. Instead, what we hope to do is impart some knowledge and share some knowledge in such a way where you can learn from the mistakes we've made. Hopefully you can find some encouragement through the research that we've found. And the data and the books that we've either come up with ourselves or have sought guidance on, and that really that we can do a better job of retention and culture building in your own practices. Now, before we start, we want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is that we need to clear a few barriers before we can get a good view of where we're going. Oftentimes people think that when we're talking about things like retention and team engagement, that this is going to be kind of philosophical only, and there won't be a lot of items that are really directly applicable that can hit my bottom line. And so today we're going to give you only one philosophical example, and the rest are going to be hard-hitting, impact-driven, frontline work that we think you're going to be able to take away and plug into your practice right away tomorrow. And so our 3 points that comprise the 4 C's are choreograph, collaborate, and then care. And those words mean just what they think. We need to figure out how we, much like an artistic show, a musical, anything done in theater, how we get everybody to work together for one amazing performance. Collaborate is that we want to make sure that the people who do the work and do the frontline work especially have an ability to affect the planning of the work that they do. The people who are closest to the front lines, we believe, have a special knowledge of what the end user, the customer, the patient actually wants. And then last, we have to do that all with the dose of caring that, frankly, we think is pretty much absent in healthcare today. We know that healthcare is 21% of GDP, or that it will be by the end of 2020. I think it's actually just shy of 20% right now, but with us all spending nearly 20 cents of every dollar on healthcare, and to think of how much waiting we do and how much discerning we have to go home and do on our own over WebMD, and how many friends we have to call to see what prognosis actually means, and how much time we spent with insurance folks to explain our benefits to us, and all those different things. It should be, frankly, a better experience than it is. And so we think that a little bit more humanness can go a long way. And then the 4th C, and it's the one that we're going to start with, is the calling itself. That this should be, and a lot of people went into healthcare because they thought that they would have the opportunity to help people. And calling is something that we really, we feel like we're a calling-driven organization, and it's something that we abide by, is that kind of mentality, getting to the why of the work that we're doing, understanding the drivers of what we're really trying to accomplish. And so I thought we'd start off under the section heading of the calling, and really defining what here at Vance Thompson Vision is our mission. And one of the things that we think is really important is that if you're going to have high-powered employees, high achievers, that they should be able to, as should you, articulate what it is that your organization is committed to. And so so that you've got a mission, or a mission statement is really, really good, but it should be well known by all. And it's not necessarily something that you have to put in lights in your waiting area or welcome area or atrium. It's something that for sure your team needs to know by heart, and they have to believe it in their heart. And so the prescriptive mission at Vance Thompson Vision is that we're going to be creating vision to inspire the lives of our team, our patients, and everyone we touch. And in short, what that really means is we're changing lives by creating vision. And we're doing it for those 3 constituencies: our team, our patients, and everyone we touch. And one of the doctors on our team, Dr. John Berdahl, who's a brilliant surgeon and a really good thinker, he just said over a presentation over lunch today to a group of doctors who are visiting, he said, I joined here 10 years ago at Vance Thompson Vision, and Vance told me that that he was almost patient first, that he was, more importantly, team first, and that the patient came second. And Dr. Berdahl said, my first couple years, I just was pretty direct with Vance, and said, I just think you're wrong. I took an oath, and I think we've got a sacred trust with the patient. And it took him about 3 years to realize, and he jokes that it's been one of the few times he's been wrong, but it took him just a few years to realize that Vance was right, that it really is a team-first approach, and that actually doesn't sacrifice good patient care. In fact, it increases it, because everybody on the team, oath or not, has signed on to make life better for our patients. And that if they can endear their team, all 200 of them, to act in accordance with the way that our doctors who took the oath would act, then that is a lot more people paying attention to the needs of that patient in a fashion that has much higher stakes than just an hourly employee might without that level of commitment. And so what Dr. Berdahl started to see firsthand is that by investing in the team and understanding the drivers of the team, they could truly have better outcomes, better patient care, a lower turnover, and a healthier environment for all involved. And so that's how we become what we think is best on earth. And this is the vision of the organization. It's right outside every one of our break rooms, and people tap it on their way into the break room, much like the Notre Dame play like a champion today. And we don't think that we're best on earth. That's not what a vision is. We think that we're striving to become that way through learning about topics like we're talking about today. And so we want to have a best on earth mentality, and we want to go into training like an athlete, like a best on earth Olympic athlete would, with starting our day with rigorous reading and starting our day with good input of what we're listening to and watching, and information that we're learning about how things work, and technology that we're adopting. So that's our commitment, but to do so, we really have to understand what drives people, right? Because if we're going to be best on earth at what we do, we have to be best on earth to work for. And this is where, a little bit of psychology background can go a long way. And a lot of us have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That first and foremost, humans need a physical comfort, physical needs before anything else. The need for air, water, food, rest. Just above that is security, that we need to be able to know that we're safe, that we have shelter, that there's stability there. If those things are compromised, the overall health of the individual is also compromised. Right above security is social, the need for being loved, belonging, or inclusion. That's the need that we all have, that's different than any of the other elements of the animal kingdom. And then there's ego, the need for self-esteem, power, recognition, and prestige. And then this notion of self-actualization, the need for development or creativity. And what that really means is self-actualization is I am more who I am now. I understand myself better now. I'm more me than ever before. I'm self-actualized. And we think this is a healthy way to just understand human needs. But what we've learned from our friend Chip Conley, who wrote the book Peak, how businesses get their mojo from Maslow, we can break this into a professional hierarchy of needs. How professionals can look at what they need from a job. And Chip Conley is the former owner of Joie de Vie Hotels in the Bay Area of California, and really started to key in on his employees, a lot of which were hourly, and many of them were just looking for a job, and their organization was constantly striving for how the folks who worked for them could transition from looking at their role as a job seeker to having a career, to having a long-term plan that actually is designed for their benefit for the long term, and moving people from the career mentality to this notion of calling. And he and others just said things like, too many organizations engage us in hollow work, that the work itself can be hollow. The quote is that the organization can be enthusiastic about small-minded visions, to commit ourselves to selfish purposes, to engage our energy in competitive drivers. Those who offer us this petty hope won't notice how lifeless it is. Now, as we're talking about work culture, what he's describing in his book there is how most corporations, organizations look at their frontline employees, that they're doing the hard, day in and day out work that's, according to the description, lifeless, right? And that's why the job orientation here in front of us, how we look at the role, is really important to whether or not they feel like it's a cultural fit to be with the organization for the long term. And so individuals who fall into this category, these categories of individuals who fall into these categories tend to view their work as a means to an end when they're at the bottom of this scale. They only work to receive pay and or benefits, but their engagement is extremely low, and engagement is something that's going to be a driver of how long they stay with an organization. And so this little backdrop of the pyramid of professional identity, I think, goes a long way in helping people understand how they look at the engagement of their role. Now, we wouldn't think so highly of these notions if we didn't see how they're experienced in real time. And just within the last few weeks, one of our brand new clinics in Fargo, North Dakota, many of whose employees haven't been part of the traditional day in and day out culture of our home Sioux Falls office, were featured in a full Fargo Inc. magazine, kind of a up and coming magazine. You can see Vance Thompson Vision listed down below. And they were featured for how their culture allows for the growth of engagement amongst its leaders. And so you can see the team here that was listed as being writers in this article or contributors. Amy Joy is the director in Fargo. She spent 20 years in retail. She worked at a store called Shields Outfitters. It's a local outdoor store for family activities, hunting, and the like. Dr. Greenwood is in the center. He's our new surgeon there. And Dr. Thompson has been with the organization since it began in 1991. This is available online, but what they wrote and what they penned and what the news found from their conversations is the same elements that have been recently published in Harvard Business Review as to what drives high culture in an organization that reduces turnover. And so they talk about the ability to collaborate with employees on new spaces. They talk about things like taking communications seriously and how the attitudes of leaders trickle down to the organization. And really they also talked about, to a great extent, what we're going to close with today under the caption of caring with their description here, which is really the thesis of how we look at culture. With the love for employees and a family-like atmosphere, Vance Thompson Vision is rewriting the book on business culture. A family-like atmosphere, right? And so I think that that's worth digging into, and we're going to do that here with this next section as we talk about how to choreograph with a team mindset. So we think choreography is the right word for what we're discussing. We're big fans of the text and of our mentor, Jim Gilmore, who wrote in 1999 this book called The Experience Economy. And it's gone through 2 re-releases. It's going to go through another one here this next year in 2020. But I think what's poignant about this book is it helps us understand that if business is going to be, if it's going to last, it needs to be experiential. People are parting with their hard-earned dollars in different ways than they were just a couple of decades ago. And while they may have purchased a product or a service in the past and been satisfied, now they're looking for things to tie their memory to. You know, if they're going to spend 20 cents of every dollar in healthcare, they expect it to be a pleasurable experience. And so it's really helpful then to use this book as a guide to think of how we deliver care in healthcare, especially in eye care. And so the premise behind this book is that work is theater and every business a stage. Work is theater and every business a stage. And one of the compelling elements of this is that they don't say it's like theater. They say business it's literally theater. And one of the joyful things about the theater is it's a wonderful experience for the people who go there to watch the theater. But the reflection of that is that it's also a joy for the people doing the performance. And to do the performance requires a lot of choreography, understanding, blocking, memorizing, scripting, all of the things that go into a good production. There's people backstage, on stage. There's people selling tickets. There's promoters who get out way ahead of the show to make sure that there's going to be enough people going to the show to make it a great and full audience. And so what would we do differently? That's the first provocation. What would we do differently if we looked at our entire day as if we were on camera, or it was a production, or we were doing it knowing that there was an audience watching us, or that our team were participating actors in a drama? What would we need to do differently? Well, when we look at this within our own organization, we use the principles of theater as we hire and as we fire people. We think that one element that's really important is the person's ability to showcase a selflessness that comes with role playing or scripting or things like that. And so every interview, we ask to play around with different lines, to tell jokes, to do different things, to put them on the spot, because we know they're going to be put on the spot once they're an employee. And throughout that whole process, a model that we're looking for, and this is one of the things that I think you can apply to your practice right away, is a 2x2 matrix called the skill and attitude matrix. And this has been adapted by what was found in Harvard Business Review. And in the skill and attitude matrix, basically what we're trying to decipher is, on a continuum, where do people rate in relationship to skill? On the same continuum, where do people rate within the continuum of attitude? And so in the skill and attitude matrix, we're trying to decipher, with existing employees or new employees, where do we think they would land when they were, if we placed them on this 2x2 matrix. So for example, when we're hiring, we really want to have people join us who are in this top category. They're highly skilled, and then they have a great attitude, above the line attitude and above the line skill. And we hire people like that all the time. It's just really hard to do on purpose, right? Because a lot of people can look really good for an hour or two in an interview, and a lot of people can find 3 or 4 people who will say nice things about them in a reference. What's really difficult is to do it consistently over years and years of time. And so we have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right on the front end. And so the thing we want to avoid is having someone join us who is low in skill and low in attitude. Now, we also want to diminish the amount of opportunities we have to hire somebody who has who's low in attitude but highly skilled. Now, we're tempted oftentimes to seek those people out, and because they can help deliver on something that's a problem for us, like right now. And we're tempted to keep those people longer than we should because they're so skilled. But what we prefer to do is find people in the top right category who have great attitudes, and maybe they need some skills training, but that we feel like is the best value of a new hire, other than the highly compensated folks that come with great attitudes and high amounts of skill. Okay, so the question then arises, let's say I've hired somebody, and let's say they have a good attitude, but they're not necessarily highly skilled yet. What do we do to get them from a lower set of skills to a higher set of skills? Well, we know that the verb we use to act with those folks is training. What they need is literal scripts. They need to be working with the machines that they're not great at using. They need to be told in a rudimentary fashion, your refraction was a couple of diopters off, or what have you. There's ways to test the empirical part of the diagnosis work that we do. Now, it's a lot harder then to get people to go from a low area of low score in attitude to a high skill in attitude. And the verb we use to describe that movement is coaching. Now, coaching is extremely difficult because it not only makes it, it's not only something that's directed towards an employee who isn't quite ready, likely, to receive that coaching, but it's often delivered by someone who isn't that comfortable giving it. And so we have to remember that these are skill sets, these are sets of attributes that we want to make sure that we can bring your teams up to speed on how to handle. Here's how we train employees. Here's how we get better at diagnostics, or get better at refractions, or get better at loading lenses, or what have you. And here's how we role play the coaching of substandard attitudes or behavior. Now, we just talked about how we think our most valuable employees are in the top left category. The problem is that a lot of times those top employees without ongoing training, they're in the category because they received training and coaching in the past. And so these are the folks that while they deliver and have the best attitude, they have the highest expectations of their workplace, right? We have to stay in front of them with new opportunities for their future. And they're the ones who will, because of their capabilities and their great attitude, they will look actively for other opportunities where they can grow up and develop their skills even more because they know what's been working for them in the past. And so this is where a high-touch work-family environment is going to be really helpful in trying to retain these employees because they want to be noticed and appreciated for the work that they're doing and the contribution that they're making. And that is the definition of engagement, right? And I think that ultimately managers have one task when it comes to those highly trained and highly coached and those who have a high aptitude to perform well. The one job is to hire the best ones and then stay out in front of them to engage them and make sure that they stay for the long term. They're the hardest to replace and the most expensive to replace. Okay, so let's talk about how we think we can go about some of these elements, both coaching and training. Well, we can look at one of my favorite companies. I don't know if there's folks on the line today from Orlando, Florida, but the metropolitan area within 30 miles of Orlando in every direction, there's about 1.2 million people. And as of a couple weeks ago, there were some odd 72,000 people who worked for Disney, either in the parks or corporately in Orlando. And somebody on the line can probably do the math, but I think it shakes out as being something like 5.6% or 5.7% of the population then of that Orlando area works for Disney. Now, what we also know is that the people who work for Disney create an environment that we all say is the happiest place on earth, right? People say it after the Super Bowl. People come home from visiting Disney and they think this is just amazing. These people are great. It's a great experience. And the question that baffles us and that our doctors continuously ask me is, why is it that 5 to 6% of the population in Florida can create an experience that's so remarkable that people would say that it's the happiest place on earth? What's going on in the water in Florida that they can find that many people? Because 5 to 6% of people in my town probably couldn't create the best experience or the happiest place on earth. What is it that they do or that they have that allows that to happen? Well, while we know them as being one of the best places on earth, what they're also known for is having some of the most amazing, regimented, and interactive training around. They even go so far as to say that their team members aren't even called employees, they're called cast members. Talking about the value of a performance, the entire backdrop of their corporate life is a performance. And so role playing, coaching, training, all baked into what they're hoping for as a world-class experience that's highly engaging for not only their customer, but their team. And they do that by breaking out how the process should go at each point of their interaction with their customers. And we do this too. This would be how we would do it in a practice like yours. So training could include how we talk about the stage of calling. What are all the things we need to know if someone's going to call into a center like ours for more information about vision care or ocular surgery, what have you? What kind of information and scripting will we use to send along to them before they actually come in for the visit, the stage of pre-visit? What hits them in the mail? What emails? What's the web user experience look like? What are all the elements that go into greeting when they walk in the door and check in at the front desk? How is the interaction with the technician and the financial folks when they're working through the testing and getting a sense of what the overall cost might be and learning the ranges? And then what will it be like when they're in front of the surgeon or or the optometrist talking about their options. You can go on and on around this experience cycle. Now, what we know is that the organizations that have these elements parsed out with detail under each stage have team members who understand what they're supposed to say when, and the flow and operations are consistent. Much like in a theater production, when people know not only their lines, but when they should say them and how loud. Should it be sung or should it be stated? All of these things help to increase not only a good performance, but they give peace to the team who knows what's coming next. See, one of the things that highly valuable employees want more than anything is clear direction. And so breaking apart the work where the direction can be clear is critically important. We know from recent Gallup surveys that 22% of employees strongly agree that their leaders have a clear direction for them. Only 26% believe that their organization delivers on its promises to them or their customers. Now that's haunting. That 1 in 4 of my employees believe that what I say will be done for them or our customers is an extremely haunting data point. And this is from a Gallup survey that was performed in 2018 across hundreds of thousands of businesses who responded to these inquiries. So simply by having some of the things staged out within an organization as to who should say what and when gives clarity about what's coming next in the work of an employee. And then we can use different elements then, use the 5 senses to make the work environment truly pleasurable, not just for the end user, the customer, but also for the team. And so during each of these stages, we want all of the 5 senses to be engaged. So when people are walking in during the greet, at our center, we have it smell like freshly baked cookies. Good for the patient. We think even better for the team. When people walk into our front door, they walk up to the front desk and start to be greeted. There's different cues and operational standards that help people know how to greet the patient best. And this was an idea that was taken from the restaurant industry. We assigned each chair of our atrium, notice we didn't call it a waiting room, we assigned each chair a different unique location. And so, for example, right here in front of the desk is what we call front and center. So it's FC, and then it seats 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so the front desk, in this case, sent a no-look pass to the clinic team saying that front and center, there's somebody who's in a brown long sleeve, a black pea coat. So that person can come from the hallway, come over to front and center section, greet them with a handshake rather than yelling or barking their name from afar. Now, that alone isn't a reason that a team member is going to stay on your team. But if there's 2 or 3 or 10 things at each of those customer experience stages that make it a little bit easier, a little bit more pleasurable, a little less antiseptic to perform the work, then it's going to be a better experience for the customer and also the team member who's performing the work itself. And that's why not only is it important to have novel ideas like this to make the workflow fun and exciting and engaging, but to do it in such a way where you have 5 or 6 of these elements at each stage of the customer experience. Because what's good for the patient is good for the experience of the team. Now, secondly, we want to collaborate without credit. When we say collaborate without credit, we mean when people raise their hand in our organization, we have to be ready to listen and to listen without bias of who gets the credit for what's done. And I remember when we first built the building that we're in 6 years ago, we were about to build 30 exam rooms. And first of all, we were terrified because of the overall cost of building in today's day and age and the cost of technology, et cetera. Well, what we decided to do is rather than build 30 and then have the technicians tell us 2 months after moving in that it should have gone differently, we built one. And we built that one in the basement of our construction management company, and we invited all of the technicians in to go through it, experience. They each got a notepad, a stack of Post-it notes to mark up this mocked room and what they should do differently. And so with that, more storage and more drawers was added, right? A leg of the table of the desk was removed because of access to the future implementation of EHR. Cupboards were lowered for shorter members of our team. Light switches were moved. All the creature comforts that we were going to invest in anyway before the concrete dried could be adjusted and done to the team's specifications. And all it took was us being selfless enough to realize that, you know, the people who are working in these rooms the most should have some input as to how we're going to do the final design. Now, that is a novel approach that a lot of practices skip, but I know a lot of you have done that well and communicated well with your team. The take-home message of it is really communicating with your team on a regular cadence, right? How often do you meet with your team to listen to their feedback, to get to a place of understanding about what their long-term goals are individually? And so one of the things that's built into our model is that we meet with our team as a group at least quarterly. We shut down the entirety of all of our clinics. We all do simulcast time together. We bring in speakers. We do some speaking, and that's when we do our big strategic talks. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, that's not that often, and you're right. Every or something like that. The meeting is from 7:30 to 8 on Monday and 7:50 to 8 every other day of the week, and it's an all call of everybody in the organization who isn't in front of a patient. And we plan out the day's events, and we talk about who's visiting and who's going to be unavailable when, and what did we do awesome yesterday, and what needs some improvement. And it's a really healthy exercise to make sure that the voice of the team is heard while we're doing the planning of the work. And so between the quarterly meetings and the daily huddles, we feel like that's a really a valuable time to get that feedback from the team. And of course, it's when we do all of our big role-playing training and new standards and scripting, et cetera. The other thing we want to do is give patients and team members an opportunity to give us the gift of feedback. Now, we do this with patients right now in an automated fashion. Well, different clinics within our program will receive in an automated form, emails and surveys as to how we do. But this happens also with the team. We want to know how they rate us as leaders. We want to know whether or not the leaders come off as caring, or if they provide enough time, or that we have their best interests in mind. All of the questions that, according to Gallup, are the ones that depict whether or not we have a highly engaging environment for our high achievers. And so having a way to solicit feedback from our patients and do it in a quantitative format is as important for the patient as it is for the team. And so we need to build that. Good practices will build this into how they do their day-to-day work. Okay, so let's talk about the last element, which is how do we, in a business-driven world that does high volumes, how do we make people not only know the rigidity of what we want them to participate in and the feedback we want them to give and how we want them to choreograph work and be creative in doing it, but know that even when they blow it, that at the end of the day, we still like them. They're still bulletproof. We still want them to come back. They still did a good job. And that's why it's important to talk about, at least at our center, the element of caring, that we've all got each other's back and there's not one of us that's better than anyone else, that we're going to all work towards the same end, and we're going to share in the work as evenly as possible. One of our values is egalitarian, and we think that to be something other than egalitarian increases the likelihood that high achievers won't stick around. Okay, and so we find that places that don't have a sharing responsibility within their team have a hard time keeping their talent, because your most talented people end up doing the majority of the work. And we want to talk about how people get that impression of us right away from the very beginning. You know, only 12% of employees, especially highly engaged employees, believe that their organization they work for does an adequate job of onboarding. So when we're talking about these expectations, it's really important to talk about how how to level set the expectation from the day they start. And so what are some of the ways that we want our team relying on each other? Well, first of all, we don't know when we're going to need each other in a work environment. We know that sometimes we've got enough juice in our tank to make it on our own, and maybe even step up and carry our brother and sister. But we also know that that's probably in exchange for a few weeks down the road feeling like we might need to be the one that's carried. And so we want to make sure that everybody feels comfortable enough to reach out and help one another, and do it in a way that's safe and fun and is what they would do back for you. And so we want to debunk the idea that people can't have a bestie at work. In fact, some of the best indicators of a long-term placement within an organization is whether or not they can point to a good friend at the workplace, right? That makes the workplace much more sticky to the organization. And there's a lot of new ink being spilled on this topic because for a long time, people didn't want fraternization at work. They didn't want you to be friends in the professional work environment, and we know now that it makes for a really healthy and loyal work environment. But we can also do it with other things that we'll stage, and we talked about how in the category of collaborating without credit, how every business is a stage, and these are events that we'll stage just for the purposes of having the team blend together. And so we call it our 12 months of Christmas, and we give this away at our Christmas party every year, and it's a calendar of all of the things we're going to do together the next year, right? We're going to go tubing together at a local ski resort. We're going to do some painting and drinking of wine. We're going to serve together at a local charity. We're going to do a cooking class together. You can see all we're going to do healthy things together, like get in shape for a 5K. The teams that spend time together stay together, and teams who don't, it's harder because they've got nothing with traction to hold, nothing sticky to hold the whole thing together. And then we want to treat the team as if they're partners. And so several years ago, one of the elements that we added to our Christmas party, and we've done it a couple of times since, and we don't want to do it every year because it becomes an expectation, but we gave out what we call the gift of sight. Now, the gift of sight is exactly what you would think. It's the ability of the team member to give vision correction to anybody they choose. Now, a lot of you would think, well, they're probably just going to use it for themselves, and maybe they would, but just by being an employee of our center, you already get free laser vision correction or refractive surgery, just by being an employee, because we want our team to have the experience that they're asking the community to have with them as the host. And so we want them to go through that experience. And so this would be for somebody else, and we knew from the get-go that it would likely be spent or given away to folks who were boyfriends or girlfriends or parents of team members. But we really wanted this to create an ownership mentality. And I'll never forget the day that Janet, who runs our business office and didn't at the time, when we gave these out, she just burst into tears. And she talked about how there was a gentleman in a small town in northern Minnesota who had burns all over his face, and how she had been working with him almost like a cold case to see if his insurance would cover LASIK. You see, his glasses, when they hit his ears were so sensitive he couldn't tolerate wearing glasses, and he could never tolerate contact lenses, especially now because his skin was hypersensitive. And so she had already taken it all the way up to the chain to the medical director of his health plan, and they wouldn't pay for laser vision correction, which isn't a surprise because we know that it's almost always an elective procedure. But the minute she received this medallion, she knew she was going to call him in Minnesota and give it to him. Now, nothing makes her feel more like a partner than the ability to give away what the doctors give away every day. And so the back of the medallion said, "It is my distinct pleasure to share this gift of sight with whomever receives this medal. The only condition is simple: the recipient must receive it with as much joy as I give it. So, friend, receive this gift of sight, and like all of us here at Vance Thompson Vision, never take it for granted. Now that takes a lot of guts for the leadership of our organization to put a $5,000 bill in a team member's hand saying, all we want you to do is treat this like we do as owners. What that does is it invites the entire team to act like owners on behalf of the whole organization, and they do. Another tactic we use is that at any moment in time, any team member can spend up to $100 to blow the mind of their colleague, their vendor, or a patient customer, those three categories. And because they treat it like owners, it doesn't get taken advantage of. It ends up being something where they pay attention to what a patient customer might be drinking, and the next time they come in, they've got the same kind of latte from Starbucks sitting there waiting for them. Right? It might be that they're paying attention to the kind of music they like, and the next time that they're in, they've printed off a listing of when that band is going to be close by. Anything that makes the customer feel like, boy, they think about me when I'm not around. And it can be like that, or it can be all the way up to as dramatic as when I heard a story from a gentleman who had just had an experience with us. And I accidentally heard this story leading up to a holiday party that we had. And he had just talked to a friend of mine outside of our building, and the friend of mine was the one who relayed the story. Well, this gentleman called in, and it was early November, and he said, hey, I need to get in for my cataract post-op check. It's been 6 months, and I think I'm supposed to get a long-term exam for that, and I'd like to get that scheduled. And Lisa from our phone team said, great, we can get you set up. It looks like the next available opportunity to see our doctors would be on November 17th. And he said, that'll work fine. Oh, actually, no. The 17th is, Lisa says, oh, does that not work? That's okay. We can find another date. Let me see here. And he says, oh, no, it's fine. It's just, it's our anniversary. And Lisa says, well, I tell you what, if you've got plans that day, why don't you just keep them and we'll find another date? And he said, no, it's okay. It's just that she passed away last month. And now Lisa is kind of somber, and he's somber. And she said, well, we're happy to keep the date or have another one if you feel like you need some time. And he said, no, I'll just keep the date. That'll be fine. And they had pleasantries, and they got off the phone. And Lisa did what every other person who takes that phone call would do. She hung up, and she turned around to her team, and she said, I just had the saddest conversation with this man whose wife passed away sometime between when he had cataract surgery and his post-op in a couple weeks. But then she did something that almost nobody else would do. She went down to the front desk, and she alerted them that on November 17th at 10 o'clock this gentleman was going to be coming in. And then she went to the clinic where that patient was going to be received, and she got them all hyped up saying, this gentleman's coming in. And then she went out, and on her own, she picked up a cookie cake, and on her own, she went online and searched for when the death had taken place, and found out that not only was this their anniversary, it was their 40th anniversary. And so it was a special one. And so she had a cookie cake made, and he comes and checks in, and he goes back to the room for his eye work, and there's a few technicians and Lisa and a couple other people in the room, and they present him with this cookie. And there's a lot of tears, and there's a lot of hugs, and they just love on him and tell him that they're glad that they get to spend such a special day with him. Now, I don't care who you are, if that doesn't make the center of your spine tingle a little bit, well, it should. And that cookie cake cost $14. And the story, it gets told and retold all the time, because Lisa is empowered. We stay out of her hair, and she can do in the moment what's right, because she treats the business like an owner. Now, I can't take out an ad for $14. And through it all, I know in my heart that if I put somebody next to Lisa, they're going to have a good experience too. And so the engagement just keeps on going and going and going because of how we treat her like a partner. So we do that in other ways as well, and people are deputized to pay attention to when people are coming in with their birthdays. And these sound like they're all customer experience examples, but they're not just engaging for the customers. They're engaging for the people who perform them, which makes a really rich work environment. And so these are the things that we feel like make it a really good place to work, and that kind of engagement is what makes people stay here. We think that we've learned a lot over the years, and we've gotten some attention for it. The Fargo article is one. You can look in the recent trade publications in our craft to see a couple of other ones that Vance or others have written about recently. But I think one of the most notable ones that we've enjoyed is our team nominated us for Entrepreneur Magazine's Best Corporate Culture. And in 2017, we were listed as one of the best corporate cultures in America. In fact, we were listed as number 19 of the mid-sized category. And we were the only one of any category that was a healthcare facility. And so all that to say, to have the care component of the 4 C's, it's not only the right way to treat people, and not only creates a lot of joy for the team, and not only creates a lot of fun for the team and the recipient of that experience, but it's highly engaging, and it's good business that drives retention. And so just to recap, we covered how we use choreography to increase retention and the experience the team has, how we collaborate with one another to make sure everybody's voice is heard and that their vote matters, that the people who are closest to work have a say in the planning of the work that they do, and that we really show a high EQ or level of caring when it comes to the people who are the closest to the patient customers, and that's all part of our calling, because without that kind of mentality, all we're doing is eye surgery. But if we do it this way, not only are we doing eye surgery, but we're treating the whole person as well. Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for being on the call today. This is some information about me should you want to learn more. And I think with that, Teresa, we might just want to open it up for some questions. And I know you might be ready to unmute yourself or others should anybody want to challenge or ask questions about any of the elements presented here today.
Sure. Thank you, Matt. I actually have not had any questions submitted yet, so if you have any you would like Matt to answer, go ahead and chat those in to us right now. And then in the meantime, there were just 2 things that I wanted to cover from the Eye Care Leaders perspective. So our webinar next month is going to be on July 11th, and that is going to feature Ashley Kozak, and she's our Director of Practice Solutions. And if you are interested in learning a little bit more about MyCare Integrity, she's going to talk through that and explain to you what the benefits are of moving to a cloud-based solution, what that solution offers, what our clients are saying, and actually do a live demo. So feel free to sign up at eyecareleaders.com if you would like to learn more about that solution. And then just one other topic while we wait for questions is for anyone on the line that is a current client of Eye Care Leaders, we will have our summit August 2nd through the 4th. We still have regular registration going on. That will go until July 10th. That also includes our room block with a special rate of just $199 at the Gaylord Rocky Resort. And Matt is actually one of our presenters. So you'll get to come hear him speak live. And we have now over 35 credits that can be earned for continuing education. So definitely a great chance to come out, learn, not only more about the system that you're using currently with Eye Care Leaders, but also about what's going on in the industry, network with your peers, and then, knock out some of those continuing education credits that you need. And you can go to eclsummit.com to register. So taking a look back, it looks like we still do not have any questions. If you think of any after this ends, feel free to reply back to the email that you will receive because we will be sending a webinar recording out to everybody. And then I can easily get you put back in touch with Matt to answer anything you may have. And you can also follow us on Twitter because we will be sending some summarized tips and action items from today's webinar. So thank you for joining and have a great day.